Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be with you for this Academic Advising Town Hall, where we would like to share our plans with you for what we think the future of academic advising at Seton Hall could look like. We're pleased that you're with us. We look forward to sharing our thoughts and our perspective with you. And mostly we look forward to receiving your feedback and hearing your thoughts on the model that we had to share with you today.
I want to note that this is a great partnership between Student Services, Academic Affairs, Provost Office, and a number of colleagues around campus. And in that vein, would like to push to Father Colin to offer the invocation.
Thank you, Shauna. Let us pray. Lord, open us. Open our eyes and our ears. Open our minds and our hearts to all that is good, to all that is true, to all that is beautiful in us and all around us. Open us. Give us the wisdom to know what is right and the courage and the strength to do what is right. Make us men and women after your own heart. Bend our hearts to your will. Help us to speak well and listen even better. And may all we say and all we do be for your glory and for the good of the students we are called to serve. We pray this day in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Colin. I'm going to go briefly over our agenda. Next slide for me, Burke. We have a relatively short presentation, and we really want to have some level of interaction. So you will be able to use the chat function, and at the end, my co-chair Steve and I will be able to field some of your questions. We might not have all of the answers, but we'll certainly take them under advisement. So to start, we'll go a little bit over the new vision for academic advising, identify the roles associated with it, talk a little bit more about what first year advising and beyond looks like, as well as our timeline, implementation groups, and then open it up to questions and answers at the end. We do encourage you to use the chat function, as well as if you have questions that you want to ask toward the end, we will open up your mics to be able to ask questions at the end. So I will let my co-chair, Steve, kick us off.
Thanks, Sean. So this represents a really good opportunity to publicly thank a lot of people at the start. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is that you see the title for the slide is sort of split in two, a strategic plan advising and then an implementation group. And that is because the way our work flowed was there was a group who worked with us in the spring semester on developing the model we're going to share with you today, and another group who has begun working now in the summer on the implementation side of the model. And one thing I want to call your attention to is you'll note that there is a very wide representation from just about all corners, really, of Seton Hall in terms of the representation. So we were pleased to have a broad swath of the campus community. And again, I just want to publicly thank all of the people you see on this slide for the time, the energy, creativity, and everything that they gave us to help us with the work that we did developing this model. So when something like this comes along, it represents a bit of an organizational change. And it's only reasonable for there to be some articulated rationale for why we would consider a change. And that's what we did at the outset. So some of the things that you see here were meant to be overarching principles that helped guide our efforts. The first of which was the notion that we could successfully enhance retention, degree completion, and student success. And there's a multitude of reasons to focus on those areas. Notably, for the university, there are obvious financial benefits to students who stay with us and complete the degree. There are rankings benefits and a whole host of other reasons for the university. But arguably more importantly than that are the benefits to students. And so we know that the opportunities for students career-wise, financially, and just throughout life are greatly enhanced if they are degree holders. And so the idea that we could put a model together that could impact degree completion in a positive way was important to us. We also felt that it was crucial to create a consistent and equitable experience for all of our undergraduate students. We know that there are pockets, large pockets, of very high quality advising taking place across the university. We also know there is some variation in how that advising is done. And while our model allows for some flexibility and variation, we also felt it was really important to create a model that created some consistency so that we could feel even more confident that all students were gaining access to a high quality academic advising experience. We wanted to increase student ownership of their academic journey. We've heard from many faculty and academic advisors who have said to us that sometimes there's a percentage of students who come into their office who just don't quite have real ownership of their academic journey and even seem a little bit lost. And so we know that we're not going to get that number down to zero necessarily, but we wanted to build in some structures and mechanisms to make it more likely that students would feel empowered to take ownership of their academic journey and feel in charge of their academic plan. We also wanted to change the nature of what takes place with the faculty advisor and the student, and in particular to build in more opportunity for mentorship and academic exploration. We've heard from many faculty advisors who say, well, yes, I spend time on course selection and other things, but I get bogged down in a student who has a hold or administrative issue or challenge. And so time gets spent on these operational and transactional and administrative pieces, and that pulls away time from being able to focus on more transformational types of things. We'd like to have a model that elevates the conversation between faculty advisors and students, and in particular that allows for the focus to be on, well, course selection, of course, but also it allows for a focus on second majors and minors and career paths and internships, and really a much more elevated discussion. Now, just because we want to achieve that, we recognize that those operational and administrative and transactional things, they don't just go away magically because we want to pull them away from the faculty-student interaction. Those things are still vitally important, and if not addressed, will negatively impact the student's degree progress. So we're proposing a point person to address some of those complex issues like holds and other things. And we recognize that the solutions to those challenges don't always reside in just one office. And so sometimes that means referring students to a few locations on campus. And with that in mind, having a point person who could help with referral and help students navigate through those issues, ultimately toward successful degree completion.
So what this looks like is a student success team. If we go back to Steve's talk about really creating students at the heart and developing some level of independent responsibility, the students themselves are part of this success team. They have ownership. But then we complement it with 3 other folks to help support the academic experience. And just to clarify, we are specifically talking about the undergraduate experience. The academic advisor or the faculty member from the college, school, or department starts in that system in year 1 with these students. They stay all 4 years, and we'll outline what that looks like in our next slide from Alyssa. But the academic advisor are assigned from the jump start. The professional advisor, and those are the folks from Center for Academic Success, EOP, RISE, Pre-Med, Pre-Dent, or student athletes, are also staying with the student all 4 years. So they have an academic advisor from the faculty, they have an advisor from the professional advising all 4 years. And we are still playing with some of the names. We do recognize that could be confusing from a student perspective. These are just for the purposes of our discussion this afternoon. They're also assigned a career coach from the Career Center. One of the things that we've learned is oftentimes we try to be proactive in having our students go to the Career Center and offer a number of workshops, but assigning a specific Career Center advisor as part of our 4-person model and student success team will really give some level of consistency for all of our students so they have that level of support all 4 years. So upon initial enrollment, students will be assigned 3 professional advisors, a faculty advisor, the professional advisor from CAS, EOP, RISE, pre-med, pre-dent, or student athletes, and a career advisor. The hope is that we provide a consistent and equitable experience. We already have this model with several populations. Our athletes have this model, our EOP students have this model, our pre-med, pre-dent, but what about our general student population? We're excited about this because then it also allows us to have some consistency for their experience over the totality of their 4 years as an undergraduate. And Alyssa will talk to what that looks like over the 4 years in our next slide.
Thank you so much. So we're very excited about this model. We really believe it's going to give students support on multiple levels. And this chart is going to help you understand how it will play out for the student when they are looking at their academic advisor versus their professional student affairs advisor. We want to help you understand what the difference is. So in the freshman year, the students would have a very similar experience to what they have now, where their primary advisor would be their student affairs counselor, and that person would do things like help them with course selection and with get their PIN, and would help them with registration. And after the first year, the advisor from the professional student affairs side of the house will remain with the students for all 4 years so that the students continue to have support from that student, but they will switch their role and no longer be responsible for course selection and PINs and registration. That'll then flip to the faculty. That's very similar to the way it is now. The difference here is that the students are going to have both resources for all 4 years, and this is meant to free up the faculty in the period that they're advising the students so that they're able to focus on the more transformational aspects of advising, so they could really work with students on things like research and helping them develop an understanding of their field, what kind of major or minor is best for them, what kind of internships or research they might want to participate in, what kind of career experience is helpful, or what kind of outcomes they might be looking for. So it really frees up the faculty to work on these transformational academic endeavors with the students. But it allows the students to continue to have a professional advisor who helps them navigate some of the more logistical aspects. So for example, a faculty or academic advisor might work with the student in relation to study abroad, but in helping them decide what's the best fit, what's the best program for them to go to, what's the best field for them to study, and how those credits might transfer back in. Whereas the professional advisor might help navigate some of the other areas, like understanding what paperwork to file, making sure that after they return from study abroad, they get their transcripts and it's applied to their account and to their transcript. So really creating this two-prong approach of support. And I think that if you look at the details of this chart, it helps you really understand the difference between the freshman year and the latter years, and the importance of the advisors from both the academic and the student affairs front during the whole 4-year life cycle of the students. Let me also add that this program will begin this year, and all of the freshmen and sophomores will have both advisors from the academic and the student affairs side, and then it will phase in years after that. So if we can move to the next slide.
Thanks, Alyssa. So as we mentioned, it is important to note that we already have this advising model in place for a pocket of students here at Seton Hall. So some examples include the Educational Opportunity Program, Pre-Med, Pre-Dent Plus, our student athletes, and our new student support services program called RISE, which stands for Resilience, Integrity, Scholarship, and Excellence. So these cohorts already have a full-time advisor and a faculty advisor all 4 years to really support and guide them in their academic journey and to stay on track. With this added support, we do see that historically students in these programs have a higher retention and graduation rate. So for example, EOP and pre-med pre-gen generally have about a 90 to 91% retention rate from the first year to the second year, which is about 5% higher than our general population. So the advisors really work together to help identify and solve potential barriers to student success. And the goal of scaling this model to the entire undergraduate student population, again, really aligns with goal 3 in our strategic plan, which is to create a premier student experience that is equitable and consistent and really creates pathways for increased retention and graduation. So now we'd like to spend a little bit more time explaining these roles. So the first person in this 4-person advising model is the student. The student is really at the heart of this model. The goal is to establish the importance of student participation and really encourages independent responsibility and ownership. So students should really feel empowered to not only work with their academic advisors, but also share their academic plans or any possible barriers to their success. We really truly see this as a partnership between the student and the advising process. The second person in this 4-person advising model is the career advisor, who will facilitate career development and also experiential learning opportunities and really partner with the faculty and the professional advisor. Some of these conversations with the career advisor can revolve around career management, goal setting, and career coaching. And now Anya will explain the roles of the other 2 members.
Thank you, Monica. So just as Shauna and Alyssa mentioned earlier, the academic advisors are the faculty members or those that are assigned by the college department. The academic advisor's role is focused on transformational advising by aligning students' coursework with their academic interests and clarifying life goals to develop their educational plans. Faculty advisors, they provide mentorship and they build meaningful relationships with their students. As they currently do, the academic advisors will assist students with course selection and provide pins after their first year. The goal is to allow the faculty members to focus on the important stuff and free them from the more bureaucratic tasks. Next slide, please. Thank you. The student affairs or the professional advisor are the full-time professional administrators like those that we have in EOP or the Center for Academic Success, formerly known as the Freshman Studies. They will help students navigate many of the more logistical aspects of their Seton Hall journey, such as using and understanding Compass and degree works, following up and assisting them with requirements related to holds and registration graduation. As they currently do, they will work heavily with students during the first year on the course selection and registration. The course selection will then switch to the academic advisors after their first year, just as we currently do. Just a reminder, just like Alyssa mentioned earlier, we're still trying to figure out what the proper name is going to be for that professional advisor. And now I will switch over to Marianne.
Thank you, Anya. I'm just going to expand a bit about this shift in having faculty have contact with students during the first year. Again, course selection will happen as it does now with the Center for Academic Success, primarily helping students select their courses for their first 3 semesters, but we are expecting that faculty advisors are going to start to connect with students from the get-go. And so that can be something that departments and programs and individual advisors can decide what works well. So it can be sending, and as we list here, sending an email to say hello, having a group meeting to welcome new majors, inviting them in to come to speak to you, during office hours or an appointment. So lots of options here, and there's a couple of good reasons for this, and one of those is for students to feel connected to the faculty a little bit earlier, so that when they make that transition, they already know who they're going to be seeing. We'll talk a little bit more about the subcommittees, but I am working with faculty, so you might already have a question. Well, what are we going to do with students who don't have a declared major yet? Who's going to get in touch with them? That's one of the things the implementation committee is working on, thinking about, so that those students without a major don't feel like they're getting a differential experience. Thank you, and I will gladly turn it over now to I did not memorize who's next.
It's me. It's me.
Thank you, Dr. Shauna.
Apologies. We are trying to answer the questions as live as we get them. So if we don't get to them during our presentation, we'll certainly get to them before the end, but great questions happening. So resources, this has been a big question that's come up in our strategic plan implementation committee a number of times. So we're going to evaluate those. I will say that I think the large majority of this model can be accomplished with existing resources and minimal cost. We did just have a presentation from EAB on Monday, or excuse me, on Tuesday that we have recorded. If you'd like access to that, please certainly email us. But it talks about traditional advising loads, particularly for those who do full-time advising. I'm not talking about faculty advising, but those who are only charged with doing academic advising. And then we're also taking a look at additional resources that faculty may need for their support of their faculty advising. We do realize that we may need to reorganize and realign existing responsibilities for professional advisors in student services in particular, and we're working with the Center for Academic Success around those pieces. But we do think that we're evaluating these very closely and are going to be looking as part of the implementation to evaluate resources accordingly. So timeline. So just as you are experiencing today, we've done a number of town halls. We did one with the students a few weeks back before they left for the break. We're doing this town hall today, but we also encourage you to write both me and Steve, and I emphasize that significantly because this isn't one or the other, it's both of us. And as we lead this effort, we want to be cognizant of all the moving parts. We also recognize there's a lot of questions that we're going to be answering, not only throughout the summer, but throughout the year. We have already kind of taken on the task of understanding that this group will probably go into the next academic year and maybe more of a long-term standing committee for the university because there's various policies and procedures that we want to address, training and expectations. There was a presentation to Faculty Senate. Thank you very much, Dr. Lloyd and Dr. Lorenzette last Friday. And right now we are in the process of working on implementation groups that are determining the details and the logistics. But again, this is just to jumpstart our planning and that we intend to carry this on throughout the academic year to assess our work to make sure that we are addressing the number of issues that we'll see as we implement this new model. We will be going live with this new model, particularly for our first and second year students this coming fall, in which the Center for Academic Success will remain with the existing first or the rising sophomore students, but the faculty advising still takes place as it has traditionally done. It's just that the Center for Academic Success will continue with them into the fall of 2021. I think this is you, Steve.
There we go. Okay, just had a little audio problem there. Back. In terms of the implementation piece that Shauna referenced, this work is beginning and taking place now over the summer and has taken the shape of a large committee with broad representation, but that committee has been broken up into several working groups. And these are the areas that we identified as things that we think are crucial in order for the proposed model to be successful. The first of which is banner and technology, and the idea of integrating and sort of matching up well this new model that you've seen today with banner and technology. And Dr. Alyssa McLeod is chairing that working group. A faculty best practices working group aimed at creating, in essence, a learning community or a community of practice for faculty advisors to be able to share things that worked, even share things that didn't work, address concerns and issues with one another and try to support one another. And Dr. Marianne Lloyd is chairing that working group. We recognize that the pre-health and health professions have some unique aspects to them. And as a result, we have a working group focused just on that population of students, and Dr. Anya Kolka is chairing that working group. And as it relates to special populations, we recognize there are several others. And this is not meant to be a complete list, but for example, transfer students, pre-majors, students who have left Seton Hall and perhaps are now coming back after a handful of years seeking to complete their degree. And so groups like that and other special populations that may have some special needs associated with them in order to make this model successful is an important piece to us. And Dr. Shauna Cooper Gibson and myself are co-chairing that working group. And then the idea that academic advising would feel like a continuous learning concept. And so that there would be resources and support and available information and available new things and research and so forth designed to support academic advisors in their professional development, we felt was an important piece to the success of this program as well, or this new model. And Dr. Monica Burnett is chairing that working group. And that really takes us to the end of the formal part of our presentation. And we know that there have been, actually it's a good thing, there have been questions and comments coming in the chat, actually somewhat fast and furious, but we view that as a positive, that there's a lot of engagement and discussion around this. So what I'll say now is we had said at the outset we wanted to share our thinking with you and then open the dialogue up to your questions, comments, thoughts, and reactions and so forth. So please feel free to continue in the chat if you like, but you are equally welcome to raise your hand virtually, and we'll happily call on you and would love to hear from you. And to the extent we can, we'll try to answer all of your questions and comments. So please, floor is open.
For those of you who posted questions in the chat, if we didn't answer them, please, raise your hand. Dr. Riley.
Yep.
Hardly doctor, barely professor. So with the focus of this change, which I support tremendously, by the way, focused on matriculation improvement across the campus, will metrics be recorded by team or by advisor? And will the metrics be available to the team and others for the purpose of self-improvement and self-assessment, which I would think would be part of any good program to help us manage ourselves?
Yeah, not that others on the team here can't answer the question, so please do. But Elvin, I'll just chime in and one say thank you for the support. We appreciate it, of course. And the other is, I think the perspective we're going to want to take here is one of the team. And so if the team's going to function successfully, then part of the evaluation in terms of the success of it, in terms of retention and other things, needs to be looked at in terms of how successful were each of these teams. And so your question, I believe, was focused on the individual, or is it going to be more the team? And I think the answer
No,
is
either way, any metrics.
Yeah, team. If there's the ability for individual as well, I think the more we can measure here, the better. But if the goal is to have a team approach around the student, then I think we're going to probably focus our efforts that way. Would be one. And two, to your question about sharing, I think the more we can share with this, the better. I mean, so the more information we're able to gather metrics wise, and then we're going to want to share all of it, because the more we share, the more people can know, the more we can refine this model. So yes, would be my answer to individual and team, and certainly to share.
So that
I just want to chime in. I just want to chime in one thing. So we are primarily going to be looking towards Compass for the majority of kind of our tracking, and it does have a lot of tracking mechanisms already built into there. So whether it be an advising interaction, whether it be a tutoring interaction, we can run comparisons on students who have had advising appointments versus students who haven't, and be able to take a look at some of those retention outcomes as well. So all of that is already in Compass, but it's a matter of being able to train all of the academic advisors involved, so everybody from the professional advisors to the faculty advisors, on how best to run those reports and utilize that information and what that actually means. So
Monica, you're saying that in Compass, the advisor will be identified on the landing page as it is today?
Correct.
And you are aware that there's no way to download that, so I can't tell how many students I have on what team. Like if you and I shared 40 students or 600 students, I have no way of identifying how many teams I'm on or how many students we share. So
Elvin, we should be able to accomplish that once DegreeWorks is live. I'm not certain about before then, but DegreeWorks should allow you, if you're an advisor, to see who is on your advising list and also to see all of the advisors the student has. In
Well,
the header,
that's a function I haven't seen yet, so
yeah,
that
well,
was.
in the header
that's
part,
news.
yeah, in the header part of degree works, we're going to list all the advisors assigned to the student, and you would be able to see that header, and then you would be able to see who's assigned to you.
And the same, since there's multiple deans involved in this governance structure, has the committee that was looking through the governance model identified which dean would be the go-to person at what point in this process, this life cycle of a student's experience at Seton Hall? So there might be 3 or 4 or 5 deans involved in, right, because of all the different representation of advising.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Alvin. I think it's possible that that could happen. Generally speaking, I think we'll probably default to the case where, okay, who's the academic dean for where that student resides? So if they reside in Stillman or Health and Medical Sciences or wherever that might be, that would be the likely first location. And if we had to go wider than that, we could, but that would be the default.
But you know what, Elvin, to your point, I also think it's helpful to know that one of the things we've discussed is that after this becomes implemented, that there would be a standing committee of cross-functional individuals from all of the colleges, as well as, you know, the professional advising side and the career side, to make sure that they're talking about issues or bottlenecks or ways to do things better so that it can be communicated back to the individual departments.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Alvin. Roseanne, I think at least what I can see on screen, I think you're next in the queue.
Yeah, hi, thank you, and thank you for working on this because advisement has been an issue, and it's good that we're all working collaboratively. I have a question and then I have a comment. I'll do my comment first. My comment is that the faculty, at least from the Senate perspective and for the years I've been involved, they feel very strongly that PINs in the freshman year need to come from departments, not from student affairs, and for a variety of different reasons. One, to get the students used to coming to departments, and I do understand there are students who don't have majors, but if we're going to have academic advisors, they should be seeing their academic advisors early on. And also because, you know, we do advise them from an academic perspective, and oftentimes the advice that they get from freshman studies might not pan out with what they want. So that's just, you're going to get that feedback from faculty because we feel very strongly that do your advisement in first year studies, but the PINs need to come from departments, and departments have been asking for this for years. The second thing is I'd like to know how the budget is now going to be realigned, because the budget for advising has for the most part been in student affairs. There's very little budget in the colleges for advisement. It's mostly the freshman advisors and the sophomore advisors, but this is just something we do as part of our workload. And the expectation is that we are going to be adding more advisors in certain parts of academic affairs. Will there be a shift of resources from student affairs to academics? So I'd like you to talk a little about how you looked at the budget and how the budget will be realigned to make sure that there's enough support for good, solid academic advising in the colleges.
Sure. Thanks, Roseanne. And I have a few thoughts on some of the things you raised, and I'm sure some of my colleagues do as well. As it relates to PINs and the freshman year, for example, you raising that actually made me think of one thing that maybe we want to discuss a little further about the proposed model here. I don't want to claim right now that we have sort of locked in on that there would be a change in the freshman year on PIN. I certainly don't want to misrepresent. I will say this, though, we intentionally want academic advisors to be engaged more with students as freshmen. And we recognize, though, at the same time that there has to be some give and take with that we can't say to academic advisors who have very heavy academic advising loads as it is in many cases, okay, now you need to start seeing this whole new swath of students. What we are suggesting and do plan to propose as part of this is find ways to have touch points with those students as freshmen. For example, you might host 2 or 3 large-scale sessions. They don't have to be one-on-ones. It could be large group where this is a chance to connect, build rapport, talk about career paths, talk about all kinds of different options that might open a student's eyes in the freshman year to, hey, with this course of study, I could do this and that, and I might pair it with this major, minor, and so on. So we are looking to try to find more balance in that freshman year between the faculty advisors and those in CAS. Like I said, I don't want to make any bold claims about pin distribution right now because I don't think we have something like that settled. As it relates to budget, that is part of what the implementation working group is focused on, and trying to have a good understanding of, while we hope to do this as efficiently as possible, to be able to lay out this summer, right? If this works out as effectively as we believe it can, what will it take to really implement this? How will resources need to be allocated or reallocated, or will new resources be necessary? We recognize we're in a resource constrained moment in time, and so trying to be as efficient as possible. So while I won't claim to be able to tell you these are the exact numbers we have in mind right now, I can say that it is something that your thinking is very much on our minds as well.
If I may chime in also, Roseanne, one of the things that I might not have been clear on is, the average caseload for a full-time professional advisor, so not the faculty advisor, but the professional advisor, is actually between 300 and 350. So that's part of that realignment of resources. So when it comes to this, what was formerly Freshman Studies, now Center for Academic Success, that's what I'm working with Hazel Patel and Monica Burnett on, and realigning just the organization. We don't think that we will have to have too many new advisors housed in Center for Academic Advising, as long as those advising loads increase to more our national standards. And part of what the Faculty Best Practices group that Marianne is chairing is looking at the various needs for supports and budget associated with the faculty academic advising needs, as well as the PIN conversation came up early on in our strategic plan advising piece. And so we know that that's one of the carrots that we know gets students to go to meet with faculty advising. And so that will not be going away. We just have to make sure that there's a consistent process for our students. One of the things that we hope to do is, kind of share practices. I know Chris Kaiser shared a number of documents and things with us that were like, oh, it's possible Stillman could use these and diplomacy could use these and all these other things. But again, we're trying to get out of the silos and really going into the one Seton Hall. So I think your questions were really good ones. And I think that we're speaking the same language. What we're trying to do, I think, Stephen, and please jump in if I'm missing it, is really outline what that looks like so there is no confusion, so that we can best, serve our students, because I think that's what we're all here for.
Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think that faculty do all three types of advisement. We do professional advisement, we do career advisement, and we do follow up on students who seem to be missing. And in my department anyway, we get advisees first year, and then we follow them through senior year. And we take that job very seriously. So I just want to reiterate, having those pins is really important. And you're going to get a lot of pushback if you continue to give out the pins through first year studies, because faculty feel very strongly about this. And as you work through this, there will be a need to be more money in the colleges to do this, to pay for those kinds of advisors that you want for those special programs. Right? Because if you want advisors, academic advisors for special programs like biology, we took in an extraordinary number of biology students, and you can't possibly expect the faculty who are teaching 3 courses a semester and running their labs to advise all those students academically.
Yeah, and,
political science, let me finish, sorry. Political science similarly just had a whole number of new students come in for this Paul's Q thing, whatever that is. And so we now have hundreds more students. We'll probably do it within our thing, but you have to look at that. You have to look at that.
Roseanne, you make a good point, and actually it was one of the recommendations of the committee that additional financial resources be given specifically to make sure that biology students or the biology department had some more resources, because we recognize that that's been a growing program. And I also know that there is a new individual being hired specifically to take a look at pre-health advising and pre-law advising, and the POLQ is a pre-law program. So that is an additional resource there, but it's something we're very mindful of and have been voicing in our advocacy. So definitely on our radar. Thank you for that support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. And
can I hop in too, please?
Say again?
Could I hop in on this?
Oh yeah, of course.
Also, so I sort of have 2 thoughts. For Roseanne primarily, but everyone on the call. So we did conduct a survey in arts and sciences around this. And though some faculty feel, like you suggest, other faculty, would like, some of them were suggesting, what, if I never did course selection again, I'd be okay with it. So I think in this current model, there's nothing to prohibit political science or other departments that have the interest and bandwidth and expertise next year to reaching out to those first year students and saying, listen, here's why poli-sci really wants to talk to you from the get-go, because here are the 17 things that we do really well and we don't want you to miss out, right? So come right in. And by knowing who their professional advisor is, I'd encourage you to, try to work cooperatively. I mean, that collaboratively and cooperatively is a real big goal here. And I would hope that, the people in Hazel Patel's division, the Center for Academic Success, as I'm learning to use the right name, that they would be willing to have some conversations around this.
Would they be willing, Marianne, to let political science give the students their pins? That's all.
You have access to the pins.
Yeah, but we don't want them to give the pins out until we want them to see us first. And that's the problem. If it continues in freshman year to be controlled, you don't get students in the habit of seeing their academic advisor. They're going to see their first year studies person because they see them at orientation. But if you don't let us give them their pins, they're a whole year in before they get into this habit. So can we do it individually by departments? I don't understand if it's working for political science or for diplomacy, because they feel very strongly about this. Just consider that. Consider why it has to be uniform across campus.
So I'm happy to have an offline logistical, because I want to recognize that some other people have their hands up about that conversation about ways we can make this optimized for the various needs. Like that, I think if that means better retention and better student success and equitable experiences, right? Those are our goals. And I will reach out about anything else, because I do want to let Deborah and Paige and Sue speak.
Yeah, thanks, Roseanne and Marianne as well. And Deborah, that's a good cue. Why don't we invite you to speak next, please?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I have an oddball question. Again, I'm in the PhD program, so if I'm out of line, just let me know and just say, like, go away, and I'll be happy to. Looking at the way you have it set up for advising, where you have 3 different individuals, and I'm not focused at all on undergrad, but I think you might have the same problem we have. We have a number of students who are international, and a lot of our problems are in getting them, or trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with them regarding visas and the international office and the changes that are always coming, and some type of consistency, because really we're small departments. PhDs are small departments. And so it's really the faculty and Joanne, our admin, who are doing 90% of the running around trying to figure out who needs visas and who needs what, and how do we do this, and how do we keep you in school, and how do we handle financial aid for you, and we're always running and scrambling and doing that. So what is your vision for, I'm sure undergrad has the same issues. And so I was just going to throw it out there just to have a comment in general on how does international students fall into this kind of structure that you have, because I'm sure it'll translate over to us eventually. And so I was just throwing it out. And if I'm out of line, just say, sorry, not now, and I'm happy to go.
I think you're completely in line. So let me start with that and say that you're right. The undergrad population of international students does have the same issues, having seen some of them firsthand. The thinking here, or the hope with the model that we have, is that as that advisor, that CAS advisor, stays with the student in the transition to years 2, 3, and 4, that person would then be the person to help address a lot of these sort of non-academic issues that are so paramount and so important that can actually throw a wrench in so many of the other things that you're trying to accomplish with the students. So that's the focus of that particular group right there. And ideally, that'll address the issue that you raised, which is such a good one, and one that you're right, a lot of international students run into.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I was just going to add, Deborah, and to that point, while we say this is the baseline, it's very possible if there are special populations. I think we have, and Monica, please jump in if I'm wrong, we could add the, Maria Bustos as an additional advisor for those students with those nuances, because the beautiful thing about Compass is the notes that we have in there, all the advisors can see them. So I can see what you say to a particular student and what Steve says to the same student, and, reinforcing that behavior. But then I see a number of questions on students using Compass or not using their email. If we start that from the jump with our orientation model and saying that's how we're going to communicate with you. Compass is where we're going to communicate your academic advising information, and we really put that independent responsibility on that. That will allow us to better communicate with each other.
Our program has a lot of those kinds of things in place, like with PIN numbers. We have a process. They don't get a PIN unless they come to us. Again, we're a small department, so it's up to the faculty really to handle everything. We're the catch-all, but everybody's been trained that, they cannot go and try to circumvent the system. The secretaries know, the admins know, even the TAs or whoever else is around knows, send it to your advisor, go away. they understand all of those facets. The email, SHU email, is in our student manual. That is your official means of communication. We don't communicate outside of that, blah, blah, blah. So we've put those step gaps in place if anyone's interested in hearing those kinds of things and how we did it. And it has been a transition with older adult learners. You know, we're not dealing with young people that are kind of more malleable. We're dealing with people who are very, you know, adult and rigid in their rigid in their ways. Just to not say that.
Well, Deborah, we would be interested in hearing from you and
So
things.
when you're ready, you just let me know.
Yeah, thank you very much. Paige, I think you're next in the queue.
Hi, thanks. A lot of people have heard me say this before, but I'll ask again. Have other options besides giving out pins been considered by the committee? So, you know, one option I know about is you clear a hold, right? Like the system puts a hold on, and then whoever has the ability to do something about that can clear it. And I'm just curious if that has been something that's been discussed, because to me, at least, it seems from the advisor perspective to be a much less frustrating experience.
So if I could take that one, Steve. We didn't discuss that in particular. I think part of what we're hoping to get clarity on, you all know we're also in the process of enabling a new degree audit tool called DegreeWorks. And it should be live probably in the early part of next spring, you know, maybe February or something like that. And when we go live, it will be, you know, not with every bell and whistle that's possible. But we believe over time there are more bells and whistles that might accomplish what you're asking, Paige, or that might be an additional feature that might help this issue. So we kind of want to understand what technology we're able to leverage and the best way to do it before we, you know, start creating a lot more churn and friction and confusion.
Sure. I'll just keep bringing it up at different points and you can get sick of it. So thank you.
Thanks, Paige. And Suli, you want to go, please?
Yes. First, I want to thank Alyssa and then Roseanne acknowledge how many students in biology. And I'm very impressive, very happy to know that we are paying attention how advising. Many years ago, I actually took the student in and then I served the career advisor, advantage advisor, all kind of things all by myself. I mean, one student. And then I stopped, so I engage more in the graduate student. And until this semester, right now I have 7 BS MD student in my laboratory working with me. I'm exercising what you are saying and doing the something, but I'm not serving a so-called academic advisor. But I'm very much appreciated that the suggestion, paying attention on all kind of aspects. So I kind of like to say thank you to you all, and then thanks again to Roseanne and then Alyssa. Recognize the biology. Right now, I know that we have 600 freshmen coming in, another 300. Imagine that we only have 12 faculty, and that is very challenging. And then we do need help to do the best job we can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We appreciate it. And Maria, I'm going to take a guess that you want to talk about something as it relates to international students. So go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to say, thank you to Deborah for bringing attention to our students, and Alyssa for bringing attention to study abroad. Happy to hear our areas mentioned tonight. But actually, I was thinking the same thing. I always think the same thing as Deborah did. Does this new strategic initiative apply to grad students or even ESL students? And ESL students are starting even earlier in their academic career at Seton Hall, and I hope we can try to retain them all the way through graduate school. But I think while we're talking about advising, it would be very helpful if we used Compass for graduate students and ESL. So we have one advising software, and then anybody that does serve graduate or ESL international students would also see my name there and know that they're an international student, which, by the way, has been one of the biggest challenges when I speak with groups on campus. No one knows when they're speaking to an international student. So if we streamline the advising and most people use Compass, then you'll see my name and you'll know it's an international student. unless we could think of something else.
Maria,
And then-
I think we can accomplish that. We can definitely add you as one of the advisors for international students. I'll put that on the list.
Oh yeah, I actually am, but it seems that we're not using Compass for grad students or ESL, so that seems to be the issue. And I just had one comment about the two different types of advisors. I think I heard something that you're trying to identify a better name, but it seemed like the faculty advisor that would help students with like their long-term overall plans, maybe a name along the lines, something like mentorship could be a good distinguishing characteristic. Okay, thank you. Great job, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. That is one of the names that we have floated in variations. So I appreciate the suggestion. I do want to mention that at the moment we are really undergraduate focused with the model, and that probably makes sense in terms of for the rollout. With that said, successes that we expect to experience, as well as maybe some things that we didn't expect. I'm sure not everything will go perfectly. Nothing ever does. Might all be things that could also be applied to graduate populations at a point in time. So appreciate the point.
I just had a quick comment. So we do have, so all students are actually loaded in Compass currently. So graduate students do appear in Compass at this point. And there are some pockets of schools and colleges that are currently using Compass for graduate advising. So if that's something that, you're interested in after, we have this conversation for the undergrads, it's definitely something we can do technology-wise.
Colleagues, Shauna in particular, did we see anything, but everyone really, did we see anything in the chat that we didn't address? I know there's been a lot coming in. We've been trying to catch them, but I'm not sure if anything slipped through or not.
I feel like we tag teamed the questions pretty well. If you didn't get your question answered, could you just raise your hand and ask it verbally for us?
Yeah, great.
I will say that there's probably some questions that might come to you after this town hall. And so again, I will re-emphasize, please email Steve and me. Yeah. And even if we don't have the answer, we can certainly push to one of the subcommittees that are working out the nuances associated with this. But I'm really, number one, super excited that a number of you participating today to see, over 100 folks on the call join on a, Thursday afternoon during the summer. I appreciate everyone's investment into supporting our students academically, but also that, we've got work to do and it's going to be continuous and ongoing. So a number of questions that we haven't answered that we're going to answer, that we're going to do our best to involve the community and get feedback. But we're also, I believe Elvin mentioned it several times, we're also going to assess this. We're not going to just, okay, here's our model, go do it. We're going to review and see, what are the gaps that we're missing, making sure that we're going to constantly enhance our practices and our processes, taking a look at resource needs and so forth ongoing. So know that this is not just a one and done and we're figuring it out. We're constantly taking a look at this. And I think it's a beautiful partnership between academic affairs and student services. So I'm really grateful to have colleagues like you all asking the good questions. Marianne, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to address Carissa's question in the chat about faculty and this being a larger role. I don't particularly see it as a larger role. I see it as just being very clear about some expectations. I think for some faculty, the one change is going to be taking 90 seconds to pop some notes into Compass, or maybe, just getting a little better at remembering that the humanities requirement in arts and sciences is 9 credits, a sequence in 6 of them, and it has to be from different prefix terms, for example. But this is not a substantial change in terms of what academic advising should look like. So if people have questions or concerns, please reach out. I'd love to help clarify.
Yep, thanks, Marianne. And there is one thing that I did see in the chat that I did want to just mention briefly, because I saw some things focused on Career Center and what their involvement might be. And while the short answer is we expect it to be multifold, that they'd be involved in many ways, one really obvious way that we maybe can highlight is the students who come in undecided. And so while, of course, by the way, we want the Career Center connected to all students, not just one particular population, but that special population of undecided who really don't know what their career path might be just yet, in many cases, connecting them in a purposeful way very early on to the Career Center can do such good things for them potentially in terms of helping them zero in on and give them some added focus and sort of launch them on their academic journey. So we do intend to have the Career Center connected in many ways. That's just one of several examples that we expect will take place. And do we have anything else that anybody noticed outstanding that we didn't adequately address? Douglas, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of ask a question because it was brought up. Maria was asking the inbound question. I'm just asking the outbound question for study abroad. It was mentioned before about kind of outbound study abroad advising and the responsibilities for the faculty to kind of advise students on that process. Right now, within the Office of International Programs, we do advising, not academic, but just to kind of give students information on different programs and what's available. I would like to move towards a model where our office actually does more of these kind of information sessions for our general students. But if we could talk, if it's possible, there's the kind of mention about the study abroad portion and how that might change with this model in terms of the advising.
I will try to take it, but I'll ask my colleagues as well. My initial reaction is to say that in many respects, it will integrate fairly similar to the way that it currently does, in that the student, before they go to whatever location they're headed off to, will still do the same approvals, will still work with their faculty advisor to go through, these are the courses you plan to take, this is how they will come back, etc. With that said, I could see a real benefit to the CAS advisor as well here in terms of interfacing with OIP around, all right, are there logistical things that need to happen before the student can get on a plane and go to wherever she or he is headed? So I could see something along those lines, but I'll ask my colleagues, co-presenters, if they have anything to add or change.
Steve, I agree. And Doug, the example I gave was really just to illustrate the difference between a faculty academic advisor and a professional advisor, and that the faculty would be more involved in the academic piece of study abroad, and the professional would be more concerned with the bureaucratic pieces or the logistical pieces. I envision that the Office of International Programs would still be very integral to that piece of it. But instead of having a liaison with maybe, hundreds of faculty, you would have a professional advisor that maybe you could liaison with if you needed to work more closely with someone on perhaps, making sure the transcript got posted to the student's record, or making sure the financial aid paperwork was in offer. It's really just trying to take that away from the faculty so they can focus on the more important aspects of academic development.
Thank you so much. And just as we move towards hopefully a post-COVID or world, we're going to see an increase in students doing international programs. And in addition, on top of that, there's like strategic growth that we would like to see in programs across the university for study abroad, more students being involved in that. So just to keep that in mind as this process rolls forward, more students, a higher percentage of students at Seton Hall, I would like to see in the next 3 to 4 years participating in these programs. And we have some targets to meet. But thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
I did see one question, Steve, from Anthony on this model moving us closer to monitoring students who leave. I do think this will help, a number of reasons why, because there's more eyeballs on these groups of students. And then we're also working in student services. The current withdrawal and processes has kind of been housed a little bit with dean of students and faculty and so forth, letting know. So it was kind of only a couple of folks knew. And in this model, there'll be a team around it. And I know Andy Minigar from the student services team is actually working on a more fluid process that has systems that involve faculty, that involve student services, that involve financial aid and enrollment management, so we can better identify these students who might be withdrawing and why, and addressing some of those issues. And
Shauna, if I can add, I think one of the essential reasons that the student is going to have this multiple pronged support is that we can't expect all the faculty to follow up with every student who's not registered, or to figure out what their impediments are. That's too much to ask. But professional advisors, it's part of their full-time job to only worry about or focus on advising issues. So it is more reasonable to say, here's a list of all of your people who haven't registered, give them a call, figure out what the impediments are, be an intermediary to try to help interface with other offices, whether it's OIP or financial aid or the bursar, so that we can have someone dedicated to sort of helping remove the impediments that might keep people from being able to persist at the university. That's one of the primary goals that Steve started with.
One last ask of this group. We know I mentioned earlier Chris Kaiser sending us a number of materials that they use in arts and sciences. If there are advising materials that you already use in your college or school or system, if you could pass them on to Steve and me, we want to kind of get all of those to kind of see there's a lot of good work already happening in a number of the schools and the college, and there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. If you're already doing it, maybe we can share it with our colleagues again to break down some of those silos to provide a consistent and equitable experience. So I know when I got some of Chris's materials, I was like, oh, this is great. I wonder if other folks use it. I'm sure there's other things that you're using in Diplo and communication and educate and that kind of stuff. So please feel free to share them with us. We do have a shared folder that Anya has been gracefully tracking so that we can, build systems, because if we build these systems, while it might be a lot of work on the front end as we build these things, it will be much less in the future and us monitoring and enhancing going forward. Steve, is there anything else you wanted to say before we close this out?
I don't think so, other than just a thank you. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you for your time and attention and for your feedback and suggestions. All very much appreciated. But no, Shauna, I'm good, so all yours, please.
Great. Well, thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Again, the conversation doesn't stop here. I know Deborah asked a question, when will we convene again? This is our last town hall, but I would ask that if you have further questions, input, insight, please send Steve and I information as we start to roll things out. We will certainly send larger community messages out, but I think we're in kind of rocking and rolling, to be honest with you, and moving things forward, but really excited. We wouldn't have been able to do it without the partnerships from student services, the colleges and the schools and faculty across campus. Steve, I'm really grateful to be able to kind of co-lead this effort with you. But we got our work cut out for us, but I also know that we have the chops to do it. So I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up. Thanks everyone for your participation.